Remember, you may also catch us on Facebook and YouTube, and of course, Twitter on @Salam Media, Instagram on Salam underscore on air. We have an online studio line, which is 0116 800355, and our WhatsApp line is 061 766 0355. Mr. Hassen Valley, you are live on air. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. There goes the whole map of Palestine. I wonder why. Alhamdulillah.
All right,
Welcome
so we are.
everybody. I think we're going to have a very interesting morning from a scholastic point of view, and I believe there's a
Yes,
lot of takeaways, and it's going to make us think very different on the subject. Jazakallah.
inshallah. So last week we touched on the Ottoman Empire, and it was really very broad. So we're going to be narrowing it down to more concise information, because I know it's not fair to actually put so much information and condense it into just under 30 minutes. We'll do our best. I know my guest has worked tirelessly to get information across for us. So in terms of our first question, how long were they in existence for? Before you answer that question, I just want to say that, when we talk about the vast expanse of the Ottoman Empire, it was a superb achievement in territorially, but also a wonderful demonstration of how our predecessors pursued the goal of making Allah's word the highest. And this is what our main focus will be on, with a reflection on the current state of Muslims. And of course, we reflect on the Palestinian issue as well, wherever we can. So very quickly, Brother Hassan, how long were they in existence for?
All right, now existence is very important because we talk about history, right? And it's important to understand history, that history is a collection of ideals. Now, ideals is subjective. Whoever we talk from his angle of ideals is different. So we never agree on that. But from now, we're looking from an Islamic perspective, from an Islamic point of view. They were in existence right from 1299. And we can plot that right through that century, and we enter into the end of the Ottoman Empire, which was in the year 2020, in the year 1923. That's when the Khilafat came to an end, right? It wasn't something on their own part, but it was a long series of protected and projected attack from that time, secularism, colonialism, and also it was the beginning of the Crusades. And one could say that the Crusades came to rest when the Ottoman Empire in 1923 sealed. So let's just go back quickly, give you an idea how it was founded. So in 1299, the rise of the power was the decline of the Seljuk Turks. This was a group of Turks in Anatolia. And what happened in that very year, around 1258, we get the Mongol hordes moving right across the steppes of China, and they enter into Baghdad. And Hulegu, who is the grandson of Genghis Khan, is out to destroy the whole empire by ransacking Baghdad. And in history, it is a very sad moment what actually happens for teachers, for education, for people, for trade. Everything was happening in Baghdad. It was a center where something never happened, where people from all over the world came. And there was no religion diversity there, that they had a prop. People did what they did, but the idea was that there was a freedom of movement and trade. And as long as people are happy in trading and they're moving, they were contented. But that empire now was coming to an end. And this was a sad moment in 1258. But something remarkable happens. In the beginning of the rise of the Ottoman Ghazi, which is also round about that area, a child is born. And this is Osman Ghazi. And Osman Ghazi then brings special nomads, around about 400 families, and that is the rise of the Ottoman Empire. And eventually, one can imagine that the whole Islamic world was now being shaped while it is being destroyed by the Mughals one side and a group of Ottoman Turks arriving there, nomads, and coming to confront one of the biggest empires of that time, which is the Byzantine Empire. So we move away from 1299, and we're moving to a period called 1350, 1389, where the rise of the Ottomans was contributed to Murad I. Now, Murad I is credited to a family. What's remarkable about this Ottoman family, that they had a series of long-lived leaders or ghazis. And these people were all very strong in their devotion and in their dedication. And this is something that we have to remember, that nowhere in Islamic issues number was a winner or was the trump card. The Muslim power was not in number. The
Mm-hmm.
Muslim power was in the faith of those handful of soldiers. So the Ottomans were very small, but they were facing formidable, strong, conditioned, trained armies who were seasoned in warfare. And these were people who were just nomads moving around, but defending what they believed. And that was their power. Something to remember that. So Sultan Murad now forms his own band, and eventually what happens is that he becomes the first person to go into the Red Sea, I mean into the Black Sea. And in the Black Sea, he starts attacking small principalities of Christian settlements there and other groups. And with that, he started naturally enriching himself, and he formed his own little one would call it a kingdom, but it was too much for him because remember, for an Ottoman Ghazi, his kingdom was his horse, the saddle was his throne, and the saddlebag was his office. And they moved, getting on continuously. They could ride from the steppes of Russia right into the center heart of Europe on that one horse and living off that horse. They would pierce a hole in the nape of the horse and suck its juice out to maintain themselves and not killing the horse. And yet they were ready to control or get into battle wherever. So they were formidable people. Now, what happens now when Sultan Murad started taking power? He became very strong. He devised a new concept. Instead of going into a town, ransacking, destroying the people, raping the women, killing the men,
We seem to be having a connection problem there. Shall we go for a quick break and see if we can rectify the problem? I think the problem is on Mr. Hassen Valley side. So we apologize for that. We'll take a quick break and then go back to him, inshallah.
And they were raised as to become the new soldiers of.
Okay, he's back. Sorry. Right.
And they were known as the Janissaries. The Janissaries, in its own way, were what. Look, it's people will say that they abused it, but if one goes into the history of Rome, they had the Praetorians. The Praetorians were a special group of people, a mixture of Slavs. They were Hungarians, they were barbarians, they were everything, and they were trained to become these powerful Praetorians that the world feared. The Janissaries were trained by them, but their job was to become the bodyguards of the ruler, and also then to take command in warfare, where they were actually the leaders leading the army. They were well schooled in warfare, they learned tactics, and also the beauty part of the Ottomans, that when in their interaction with the Mongols, they discovered gunpowder, and they were now able to use gunpowder in small cannons, and we will hear more about this later. So now we find there is a rise of the Islamic Empire. Now the Janissaries, remember, we get a period now after we've moved from Murad, we get to Bayezid. It's around about 1389 to 1402. And for him, that the land that he conquered and the young Christian boys that they were trained as Muslims, and they were known as the Mamluks, and the Turkish boys growing up, same thing was happening, not only there. Turkish boys were growing up in the Arab and the Persian empires, and they were also being trained, right, to take leadership. So it was an order of the day where they would then enrich. Instead of having mercenaries as soldiers, right, that means they gun for hire. They had no mercenaries. They trained people because a mercenary would get paid and he's not scared. He wants to win a war. He wants to take loot. He doesn't care who he kills. He's got no respect. Now, the Muslims had to live by the honor of the Quran. And this is something that we cannot deny, or nor can it be rejected in the world. That the Muslims won the heart and the mind of the people they conquered. They didn't ransack it. And this is one of the greatest things. Today, what we are seeing is a totally move away. It is not warfare in any form. The people are acting not like human beings. They disregard. And the Prophet ﷺ made a very strong rule. Non-companions cannot be touched. You cannot hurt women, children, at the old age. You cannot destroy their homes. You cannot destroy their places of worship. You cannot affect their teachers, their rabbis, their priests, their whatever what is. So there were war was the design between the people who were on the ground who were fighting. And then after that, but not a scorched palace where you come into the town, you're
Okay, I think we're going to have to quickly take our break now and ask the question on what was Islam's influence in the rise of the Ottoman
and
Empire.
all
This
you
would,
leave
in
behind
fact,
is just
build up. I beg your pardon. We're going to have to cut your answer there, Mr. Valley, and then we'll come back with what you were saying because it leads into my next question. Jazakallah. Delhi. Delhi. I think you must just tell him that he's freezing, so that's why we had to stop. So you must just stop there, and I'll start with the next question. Yeah, please, right? Because I think he's just talking and talking. He doesn't know he's off.
All right.
Yeah. You've got the wrong name on the screen. My name is Najma Khota, not Aisha Kaji.
Oh, okay.
Fix it quickly.
Okay, please type it out for me so that I would just.
There's it, Najma Khota.
Okay.
Do it quickly, please.
Thank you for saying that.
Hello? I can't hear. I can't hear anything.
Visit our website at www.ashrafulaid.org.
Salam Media, a global voice for humanity.
That was not really my first message. I had had several messages, and
From samosas and half moons to cook sisters and roti, everything between iftar and seri makes sunfoil cooking oil an essential part of your Ramadan. Approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a healthy diet, this blessed month, give your family the best with sunfoil because tradition just tastes better. From samosas and half moons to cook sisters and roti, everything between iftar and seri makes sunfoil cooking oil an essential part of your Ramadan. Approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a healthy diet, this blessed month, give your family the best with sunfoil because tradition just tastes better.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Freedom
I'm
Stationery
Najma
supply Marlin and Marlin.
I'm Najma Khota. Welcome back to the program. We're speaking to Hassen Valley, and he is giving us the overview of the Ottoman Empire. And just before the break, you went into how passionate the Ghazans were, the founders of the Ottoman Empire were in terms of their strength in faith. And so it leads into my next question, which is, what was Islam's influence in the rise of the Ottoman Empire? And I also want to make you aware that Mr. Valley's connection sometimes is a problem. He's freezing. So we apologize for that, but we will continue as quick as possible. You may go ahead, Brother Hassan.
I don't know where we were, but anyway, let's continue right now. The second question is very important because what was the influence of Islam in the rise of the Ottoman Empire? What was the impact of Iqra? That is very important. When Allah Ta'ala revealed the word Iqra, what was his influence? What was the ministry of the Prophet ﷺ? The political, 13 years, the activism, 10 years in Medina. From aspirations that the Prophet ﷺ had to action. The universal community of the children of Adam al-Islam, that was the important issue, is piety and religion. So wherever Muslims went, it was not also about conquering. It was not Constantinople, which was the price, but it was bringing the world to the reality of Islam, that Islam was about piety and bringing people together to coexist. So the message of Islam is that there is unity in diversity. Islam is not made of Arabs. It's not an Arab religion. It's not an Hindu religion. It's not an Indian religion. It's not a Turkish religion. It's a religion that is made up of the whole world. That's why it's no strange now that when the people are entering into Islam in droves, it is because they themselves have found the GPS. And that GPS, the natural inclination to worship one God. And in the unity and unicity of Islam, everybody finds a place. It's not the culture, it's not the language, it's not the diet, it's not the dress, it's nothing. But it's the belief in the uniqueness in one God. And that is what brings people together. So Islam was fighting a great battle. First, it had to establish itself. Then, remember, there is this ongoing war, right, between Caesar, the Pope, and Islam. And that will carry on. And with people coming up, I mean, from different ways, like the Ghazans, the Ottoman Empire, all of them came. But in their back was the message of Islam, which they need to do. So Allah Ta'ala makes easy that we also understand what it is. See, when we talk about the golden age of Islam, it was not as the way the West projected it. I mean, look at the leaders of the Ottomans and you see them. What happened in the golden age of Islam? The West only knows the Spanish. They call it their Inquisition, but they know just the Khilafat of Granada, the Khilafat in Spain. Europe best benefited from what happened in Muslim Spain. Don't forget, when Muslim Spain was rising in gardens and waterfalls and fountains and delicacies and dress and mannerism, in France, all over, people were behaving like cannibals. And I mean, this is the quote where their historians, that they were even feeding on human flesh. There was no decorum, there was nothing. And here, not far from here, there was
right.
Muslim Spain, but
So if we bring it back to the Ottoman history, then we see
Right.
that there's a common thread, leading into next week's empire, that is the Mughal Empire, which is also exactly that they went in, unifying the people of the country that they invaded. So we'll talk more about that on that basis. But I like that we've actually set a tone for that as well, and the understanding of that is very important. So if we move back into the golden age, and there are so many leaders in this empire that we can choose, and it's so difficult to narrow it down. But I chose to talk about the leadership of Harun al-Rashid. If we can just expand on that and detail what it was and why is it labeled as the golden era.
Look, I think what actually happened is that there's this misunderstanding about the golden era. The golden era was not just Baghdad, it started there. The golden era went into Muslim Spain, but not forgetting while there was a third empire that was opening, and that was the empire in Egypt, Kahara, right? Kahara, which is such a beautiful there, a new empire, and they had the whole of Africa and everything else. So there was a lot of development, and not to forget that the first university in Kahara, in Cairo, the famous Al-Azhar University was there, almost still existent. So if you take all the three together, you'll find that in the tapestry of the glory of Islam, its golden age, the pieces are too big. Everybody has a share. The cottons from everywhere. It makes up this beautiful tapestry of Islam. So let's take Harun al-Rashid, right? Young boy, very young, right? He comes in at a time when his father puts him into command, and he's got a big challenge, right? So Baghdad, what happens? It becomes the unique metropolis of not only worship, not only congregation, but the assembly of learning. Nowhere in the world, even today, we don't have a place in the world where we can say there's a Darul Hikmah, a Darul Bayt, a place of wisdom, where you invite scholars from everywhere, irrespective of religion or their persuasion. They come as thinkers. And that's what Harun Rashid, he brought them together. And if you were a person who was a master in your learning, he gave you a seat, a high position in Darul Bayt. So Islam found semblance because they were now taking knowledge from everywhere. They took the Greek knowledge, the Hellenic knowledge, they took the knowledge from China, they took the knowledge from India, wherever. And all that knowledge was now being translated into Arabic. And it's a remarkable thing that even the Pope consigned his own, from his students from the Vatican, the rabbis, the young priests coming, to go and learn Arabic in order to get the knowledge. And when they came, they did whatever they could. From Arabic, they translated into Latin, and you find that is now in the archives of the Vatican. No credit to the Arabs. But alhamdulillah, the world must benefit. So Islam had a unique position. But what is more important? For years, from Europe, Africa, all over, there were wars. During the Golden Age, Islam opened up its gates into trade. People came in, they were trading. And when you help people to trade economically viable, then they forget all their pains. They made their money. There was no taxation that they had to pay to the mother country. They enjoyed the facilities, the hospitality of the Muslims, and the best part, that most of the roads, the caravan, the Silk routes, was safe. There were brigades everywhere, but they couldn't. But people could move. The people could travel from one end to the other, and scholars were just moving back and forth. And Baghdad became a. Now, if you look at Baghdad, there was no city built like it. In the center, he built his beautiful place, and around was the Tigris and Euphrates River. And the people used to travel by boat, and when they get off the boat, the cities were aligned right around it, so they could travel into the city by foot, or they could use a horse. So it became a center of learning, a center of activity. It became a center of knowledge. It became a center of industry. But it's one thing we must realize, that knowledge was not an industry for the few to control and the many to enrich. It was the advancement and the upliftment of humanity. And Islam gave its greatest contribution. From Iqra, the one word that Allah Ta'ala revealed to the Prophet: read, learn, practice, and teach. And
right. Right. And finally, in conclusion of this particular episode, how do we draw a parallel to what it is that we experiencing now, and the importance of this subject matter on this program?
Look, let's face reality. What's happening in the Muslim world is nothing new for us. When the Muslims came into power, there were two types of people. There was a Khilafat, the Khalif, who was the representative of the Prophet ﷺ and the custodian of the faith. There was a Sultan, who was more interested in his own. He was engaged in wars, and so he enriched, but he never interfered with the Khilafat. In other words, he said, you will look after the religion. We will look after the people. Right. So we had that. But then what happens? Eventually, it's all different people coming and a mixture. Then people started opting for the greater pleasures of the world, right? And in that, we found there was a decline. But more than that, the Ottoman Empire opened such an industry that everybody benefited. And that industry was what was funding the soldiers that the Ottomans had in the places or their principalities that they had all over. Because when they came in, they protected the people. And in return, the people paid a tax called jizya. But once their coffers in Turkey, Istanbul, dried out, they could not protect those people. So they were getting weaker on this. And the other side, Europe was taking advantage, and you find that the wars were now coming from Europe, taking piece by piece of the Ottoman Empire, and the empire was shrinking. And this was a collective action of Europe. I mentioned last week about the guild system, that how they controlled the economy. Everybody partook. There was no abuse. There was no hoarding. There was no bribery. There was no escalation of prices. There was no riba. There was no interest. Nothing. Everything was controlled by the ulama. So the ulama had a top position. That is the sheikhs that were there, the tariqah. They maintained, and that kept the people in deen. Yes, people did go out of the boundaries. There's no question about it. But when they collapsed that, when they came in and they went directly to the mills and they bought the cotton, they closed the whole industry.
The
milling, the engineers that created that, the textile firms, the merchants, and everything came in, and the revenue.
Okay, so we're not, it's good to actually reflect on the fall of the empire.
That is what Islam was about.
That's right. But in terms of the importance of the subject in current times, if you can just sum it up very quickly, we're almost done with the segment of the program.
Okay. Today, what we have to realize that everywhere there is an onslaught, and especially we can see now in the Middle East. And now you can see it's open. That even in a case like genocide, and I mean, that is important. We can't shy away from. The world are sitting back. It's no use raising your voice and not your action. And it is never in human history has humanity stooped so low as has happened, both among the Muslims and the people outside. And this is a sign. It never happened in the time when the Muslims were in power. One thing they did, they protected not only the people that they ruled over, but they even protect the people outside. Islam gave a sense of peace to the world. And since the end of the Khilafat, and the world can admit it, the historians are saying, there was never peace like that was in the time of the Muslims. And I think we need to realize this. This is important. That maybe we find ourselves hopeless, but there isn't. Because while the Mongols were destroying Baghdad, the Ottomans were raising a new group that would eventually form their access Constantinople into Istanbul, an empire. When the fight became between the Abbasides and the Umayyads, one person, only survivor, ran into Spain, and he started the Muslim Spain. The Fatimites went into Egypt, he started there. So there is
So we look at the timeline and the historical events of the different empires, and inshallah we look at the Mughal Empire next week.
Empire is very important.
And then we lead into our next segment. I just want to let you in on it before we say our salams to you. The Ashara Mubashara, who were the founders, the four Khulafa, the Rashidin, were the founders of the greatest empires. And that was on that footing and that foundation that the empire we focused on today was actually based on. So those were our great leaders and our great, majestic, giant leaders of Islam. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah so much, Brother Hassen, for your time. And we look forward to speaking to you next week, inshallah, at the same time.
I hope everybody got the message, and like I said, we want to make our Muslims think. History must not be something we glorify; it's a lesson to learn, and that is what the Quran says.
Absolutely.
That the stories of the prophets are a lesson for those who can reflect Ibrah, and I think we forgot that. If we can start learning today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. After the break, you may join us with our next guest, who is Maulana Habib Milanzi. I beg your pardon. Maulana Habib Milanzi joining us right after this.
Yeah, it said disconnecting. So hopefully you'll be able to connect now.
Please be very aware of the mic. If it's on, they can
Yeah.
hear us talking.
Yes.
So you have to wait. He went away again. He should sit here with you so that you can. Is the mic off?
Yeah, it's off now.
So that he can show you what to do, because it looks very